Hello, hello, everybody. My name is Jose, and welcome to our weekly walk. Usually I'm on the back end of this program answering any questions, but today I'll actually be the one taking you folks around the pool, which is one of Central Park's water bodies. It's located towards the northwestern side of the park. Now, just to kind of clarify, it's not really a swimming pool or anything like that. It's more of a mellow pond with lots of lovely trees and benches for sitting and relaxing. It is definitely a bit of a hidden gem in Central Park. It's beloved by locals, and it's still definitely something that's a bit of a mystery to a lot of new visitors to Central Park. I kind of actually like to think of the pool as halfway between Central Park's naturalistic areas and the urban landscape of the city. There's definitely a little bit of something for everyone around the area. Okay, so before we begin, just a bit of housekeeping. All participants are muted, but of course you can use the chat feature to say hello and comment. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A function, and my colleagues Ryan and Ian are going to be on the back end, and they'll be answering any questions for you folks. Now, all the photos that you will see today were taken by myself over the past week. I'll also be using a few historical images, and these were taken from the New York Public Library. Okay, so of course I work as a guide for the Central Park Conservancy. Now we're here to basically preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. Basically, that means that we take care of the park year-round and we keep it clean, safe, and beautiful for all to use. Now, as a nonprofit, our work is funded primarily by the generosity of individual donors. If you'd like to actually help us out on our mission, please visit centralparknyc.org/support. And I know many of you are actually members who regularly support us. And so for that, we wholeheartedly thank you. Okay, so for today's walk, we are going to be going around the pool in a counterclockwise direction. It's located just off the park entrance at Central Park West, roughly between 101st Street and 102nd Street. So we're actually going to be starting off towards Central Park West, as I mentioned. Then we're going to head east, northeast rather, along the pool's southern edges. We'll also explore a bit of Glen Span Arch and the lock area. Then we'll head back up and walk around the northern end and western sides of the pool. Now, last time we were here, we went on a weekly walk around the pool. It was actually back in summer, and that was with Brendan. Today, you folks will get a chance to kind of experience this area from a different season, which I think is actually pretty great just because the park really does give off very, very, very different vibes throughout the year. Okay, so right now I actually want to go ahead and launch a quick poll. So let me go ahead and launch it right now. Okay, so we have quite a few people in the audience today, and I'm just kind of wondering, have you been to the pool before? Now, I know many folks here have visited Central Park maybe only once or twice. Some of you maybe never, and that's okay because we actually want to see we want you to see just how amazing of a park it is. And we always want to extend that invitation to all that want to see it. Okay, so let me go ahead and end off the poll right now. And it looks like about 51% of you have never been to the pool before, so a little bit more than half, whereas about 30% have been here once or twice before. And of course, about 19% come here all the time. So that's actually kind of amazing. Definitely welcome to all of you folks that have never been here before. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit of history before we proceed. So here we've got an old map of the upper sections of Central Park. So this is from 1865. And this, of course, was drawn up by the park's chief engineer. His name was Egbert Veely. What's really cool about this map is that you can actually basically see the natural topography of the area as it was in the 19th century. You can also see the planned park and the city blocks around it. Now, the modern day pool would be located roughly where this red circle is. And as you can see, the natural stream actually once went through Central Park. Now, that old stream was called Montayne's Rivulet, which was named after an early Huguenot colonist. And it made its way from here at 101st Street, northeast towards what's now the Harlem Mere. Basically, Montayne's Rivulet was dammed around 7th Avenue, which is basically right around here, which created the water body that we now call the pool. I always find it really kind of interesting that even though the park is very much an artificial and built environment, portions of the natural world, like its original topography, like portions of streams and rivers, they still manage to influence the design of its construction. Okay, so we're actually going to go ahead and begin our walk right here at Boysgate on 100th Street. In total, there are actually about 20 different officially named gates of Central Park, and Boysgate's counterpart is called, of course, Girls Gate, and that's going to be directly located on the other side of the park at 102nd Street. I always find it really fascinating that the designers of Central Park actually basically named these entrances after regular folks, people that would come here every day, rather than famous individuals. Now, walking into the park right now, one thing you might kind of notice is that the treetops are still kind of barren. It's, of course, still early on in the spring, and so we're basically looking at that in-between seasons time of the year. It might look a little bland, but definitely make no mistake, in about a couple of weeks, maybe even a few days, these trees really will start to come alive with quite a bit of greenery. So take, for example, this English elm tree right around the corner from the walking path. So if you actually examine its branches, you can see that's definitely starting to bud. Pretty soon this tree is actually going to provide some pretty excellent shade. So great for when you really start to feel that warm summer sun. Basically, really anywhere around Central Park, everywhere you look, trees like this one are really starting to come alive, which is one positive aspect of this time of the year. Now, I really like this tree quite a lot just because it's got this really unique and rather large burl located near the bottom of its trunk. Burls, of course, aren't really harmful to the tree itself. Basically, they form as a response to some stress or injury to the tree. So in case you were wondering, yes, this English elm is actually fine. It's not diseased or anything like that. In fact, I think burls really can actually give trees some character to it. Now, moving along, we start to head north, and we're going to go ahead and descend down a slight incline towards the water. From here, walking along this pathway, we can start to see perhaps maybe a glimpse of the pool. Now, just ahead, you might be able to notice these railings separating you from the water below. And looking over the right-hand side, you can see that there's actually this small grotto or perhaps maybe a cave from where the water is actually feeding the pool. Now, if we were to actually crawl underneath here, we'd actually find a pipe and not a natural stream or spring or anything like that. Now, if you've been out watching our virtual tours and walks, then you know that the park streams, ponds, lakes, these days they're all artificial, and they're actually, of course, fed by pipes connected to the city's water supply system. And of course, that includes the pool itself. Now, that water basically passes right below us beneath what's pretty much a small bridge, and then it would flow into the pool itself. And here it is, cascading its way down towards the water. What's really amazing is that this all seems so natural, as if this was really basically untouched and pristine. But of course, Central Park is still part of the built New York City environment. And you'll see reminders of that anywhere you go around the park if you look hard enough. Now let's go ahead and follow the water for a little bit. And just a few steps down, you'll see some wildlife just basically kind of hanging out. This is quite a common and even an iconic sight in the park. These, of course, are going to be mallards on the water. They like to basically just enjoy the tranquility of the pool when they can, just like the people that come here and visit, of course. Now, if you look directly to the right of where we're standing right now, you can see that there's this tree that might actually catch your eye. So this is what's called the river birch tree. And this actually used to be a fairly common tree in the landscape of pre-colonial New York. So it actually has this very thin, almost paper-like bark that peels in layers quite easily. And of course, it's got this slender salmon-colored trunk. This, of course, is actually native to the forests and swamps of the eastern United States. Native Americans would actually utilize its sap as kind of like a sweetener, almost kind of like maple syrup. And apparently, I've never actually tried this before, but it does have a very strong taste that can be only described as spicy sweet. So, try putting that on your pancakes in the morning time. Again, here we can see signs of spring everywhere. The male river birch, it has these long flowers at the ends of twigs called catkins that are formed in autumn, but they actually release pollen in the springtime. Now, these release quite a bit of pollen. So if you suffer from hay fever, like I do, then now you know at least one source of your seasonal allergies. Now, when you're walking along the southern shore of the pool, I always definitely recommend stopping by this particular bench to take in the views. This is certainly one of the better spots in all of the area to do so. So not only do you have the water right in front of you, but you're also surrounded by these very stately bald cypress trees. Now, these are often found in wetlands down south, so they are, of course, right at home here at the pool. Now, one of the more curious things about bald cypress trees is that they have these very distinct, very knobby spurts called knees that grow just right above their roots. Scientists are actually still debating what they actually do, but a likely explanation is that they're actually used for stabilizing the tree in swampy environments. Bald cypresses can be very, very interesting. Later on in our walk, I'll actually show you folks one of our favorite specimens over towards the western end of the pool. Okay, so for now, we can go ahead and start heading east. We've definitely got some great views along this portion. One thing about water bodies in Central Park, like the lake, the pond, or of course the pool, is that they can all be very terrific framing devices. As you can see on the map, we're still very close to these streets of the city, but sometimes it can really almost feel like we're miles away from civilization. Looking west with the big apartment buildings that are dominating the background, we are, of course, reminded that the Upper West Side is basically less than a block away from where we're standing. But if we turn our heads to the other direction, all traces of city life basically vanish, perhaps maybe with the exception of the lamppost right here. It's like basically we've been almost kind of transported north towards the Catskill Mountains or perhaps maybe the Adirondacks. To me, this is really quite an inviting scene. So why don't we actually go ahead and check it out? Let's go ahead and make our way down this pathway. This pathway, of course, is going to lead us down towards what's called the ravine, which, like the pool, is another very interesting hidden gem of Central Park. It's actually a part of the larger Northwoods section, and there's definitely quite a lot to explore in this area, but we'll go ahead and leave that for another weekly walk. Now, over on our left, we've got this very lovely cascade. Basically, all that water from the pool makes its way down and forms what's called the loch, which is actually a remnant of the old Montayne's Rivulet. Back in the 19th century, that water was actually dammed using these rocks, as I mentioned earlier, and it actually formed this waterfall that's now perfect for any photo opportunity in really any season. The loch then, of course, makes its way through what's called Glen Span Arch. Think of this as almost kind of like the gateway into the ravine. The stonework on this really is quite amazing, and it rivals really any rustic bridge that you're going to find anywhere in Central Park. But when it was first constructed, however, it actually looked quite a bit different than it does now. Its upper sections, which carried a roadway for horse-drawn carriages, was actually made out of wood. Now, that wood rotted out over the next few decades, and eventually it would be replaced by the current stonework. Okay, so continuing on with our walk, now we retrace our steps back up the pathway around the pool until we come to another rustic bridge. So this one is, of course, a lot smaller than Glen Span Arch, but I find it just as beautiful. As we've learned last week on our walk around the Hallett Nature Sanctuary, the Central Park Conservancy uses excess black locust wood for many of our rustic bridges. This, I think, is a really perfect way to connect Manhattan's largest urban park back to nature. So continuing on with our walk, and from the eastern side of the pool, let's now go ahead and make our way around the northern shore. And we are going to be taking this pathway as we head west. Now, this, of course, is certainly one of the more relaxing spots in the park to take in the fresh air in a nice spring afternoon. Really, on any given day, you're going to see folks here just kind of taking a break from city life. I like to think of the pool as, of course, one of Central Park's best kept secrets, as I mentioned earlier. It's a water body that's often overlooked by many first-time visitors, especially when compared to areas like the lake or the pond down at the southern end. Now, if you look very closely and examine some of the benches that are overlooking the water, you're going to see some very interesting plaques on a lot of them. Now, this particular one actually caught my eye while I was walking down there. So this one actually commemorates the 150th anniversary of the construction of Central Park. It's really amazing to think just how old this park is and how much history there is in here. It's almost like a slice of 19th century life within our ever-evolving city. All right, so moving on, and from here, we're actually going to take the pathway towards the left, and that's going to take us towards the western edge of the pool and back up towards Central Park West. Now, the pathway on the right, that one is going to take us north towards the Great Hill, but again, that is going to be a walk for another day. Take note as well of the high walls leading out to the city streets. The pool is definitely much lower in elevation than the neighboring Upper West Side area. So this really allows you to momentarily forget that you are, of course, in New York City. This is an effect that's used quite a lot throughout Central Park, like down in the southern end, where the elevation basically dips once you enter through the park gates. Now, I find this part of the pool interesting because here you can actually find some rather large and old and generally some very interesting trees. The one on the left, this is a weeping willow, and once it has its leaves in, you can spot this one all the way from the other side of the pool. Its characteristic ground sweeping branches really kind of stand out, and it's definitely quite a favorite favorite tree to plant in many different parks and landscapes and things like that. The one on the right, this big one right here, this is, of course, a bald cypress tree. In fact, this is one of the largest bald cypress trees in all of Central Park. Its towering straight trunk really anchors the western shore of the pool. It's really definitely a magnificent specimen, if you ask me. And just right around the corner, you're going to find this very unassuming wooden boardwalk, which separates the pool from a small marshy area. It's actually here because the pool was, believe it or not, once larger than it is today. Before the 1960s, this marsh used to be a cove, but after a water main break actually washed away a small rock island that was here, that cove was eventually filled in, essentially creating a small mini wetland that actually still stands to this very day. Now, there are, of course, some pretty nice views from this boardwalk, from the spot where we're standing. It's definitely quite a perfect place to just kind of stand and reflect on things. Now, while it may look pretty calming right now in early spring, as anyone familiar with the park knows, the pool is one of the most underrated autumn hotspots in all of Manhattan. Now, this is the same view in October. So during peak fall foliage, all the trees here just really come to life, and basically they turn all sorts of lovely colors. The pool is actually home to quite a diversity of different trees, including red maples, tulip trees, sweet gums, oaks, willows, and ginkgos. So every year you can definitely bet that it puts on quite a stunning display. In fact, autumn might probably be one of my favorite seasons. If you guys have a favorite season or anything like that, just let us know in the chat section below. All right, so now we near the end of our journey. Just a short walk up the slope, and we'll be back up where we started from on 100th Street. Now, we're going to go ahead and walk right past this pin oak tree over on the left-hand side. And we're going to walk up this staircase up towards the street level. Now, looking back from the top of the stairs, we can see that the park really is quite lively today. After a very long, snowy winter here in New York, I'm sure I'm really not the only one who's actually glad to welcome in the changing season. With the weather getting nice again, Central Park is, of course, once again becoming the city's favorite outdoor destination. And so with that, I thank you all so much for visiting the park with me today. We've actually got a few interesting virtual programs lined up for you folks over the next few days. So tomorrow we have our spring tree walk at 3 p.m. So be sure to check that out. Next Tuesday, I'll be leading a virtual tour at the park's southern end. I think that one's actually pretty interesting because we actually get to check out all the wonderful, beautiful landmarks and statues of the southeastern corner of the park, which of course is one of the more famous sections of the park. The links for that program you can find all down in the chat box. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually leave this room open for a few minutes for any last questions that you folks might want to ask us. You can either ask us over in the chat section or over in the Q&A section. But otherwise, it has been definitely quite a pleasure speaking to you folks. So from the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe and be well.